Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, and we're here today with another review. This time we're doing a spoiler-free review of The Saviour's Champion by Jenna Moreci. I don't know why I dramatically held that up for you as though you hadn't already read the title of this video, but The Saviour's Champion is a self-published book by Jenna Moreci, who is in her own words, YouTube sensation, dominating the AuthorTube community, dominating it. So yes, this is a self-published book. Interest, of course, to us as a community of YouTube readers to see what a YouTube writer would put on the table. I know there's been some controversy recently with people like Sasha Alsberg doing books and things, but this is, you know, let's just give credit where credit's due. This is a self-published book, and it looks like legit as hell. You know, it's got really nice, you know, design in there. The cover design's really good, and it fits in well with a bookshelf. Let's put it that way. So all credit to Jenna Moreci. She's done a fantastic job in putting this out there by herself. Much credit. So let's, without further ado, just talk about the book. First of all, probably interested in what it's about if you've never heard of it. So this book is about Tobias Kaya, who is a young labourer in the city of Thesson. He used to be an apprentice to the nation's favourite artist, but after a fatal wagon accident that left his father dead and his sister paralysed from the waist down, Tobias thought, well, you know, not a lot of money in artwork, best to go cut some sugar cane in a field. So that's what he does. Unfortunately for poor Tobias, he's made the mistake that many of us here have made and not realised that the shops don't open on holidays. So he goes to buy his sister some medicine to realise that he can't because the pharmacy's closed. So instead of just waiting a day until it's open again, he decides to enter a life or death tournament to win the hand in marriage of the Queen of the Realm, glowing lady and magical woman, the Saviour. I don't know why he did that, really. A bit impulsive. He could have just waited like a day, as I said, until the shop was open again. But the bright side for Tobias is that if you enter the tournament, you do get a handful of shiny gold coins to give to your family as like an allowance for whilst you're away. So, you know, all good for him, I guess. That's what his motivation is. Unfortunately, he's not quite as motivated as the 19 other guys who entered this tournament for various reasons. Some go in for glory, some go in just because they're a dickhead and they want to kill some people in a tournament, and some people genuinely believe that they're in love with a woman that no one has ever actually seen. So you know, lots of mixed bag characters there. We're now going to talk about some of the good points and some of the bad points, because this book was really, for me, a very mixed bag. I've seen a lot of reviews of this that are giving it no less than 4 stars and closer to a lot of 5-star reviews for this. I cannot honestly say that it meets those standards for me, and we'll talk about why, but we're going to talk about the good things first of all. So first of all, I have to say it is a very, very, very fun, simple story. It doesn't promise to be anything super complex or involved. It promises to be a book about a tournament of bloodshed, and that is what we get. You know, we get a tournament of bloodshed, and it actually shows the tournament. You know, we have a lot of focus put on the different challenges and things, and Jenna's done a really fantastic job of like coming up with all these different ideas for how the tournament will progress. It's kind of like a really violent season of The Apprentice, where the winner gets to be the king by virtue of being married to the shiny queen. And yeah, it's very, as I say, very simple, but it's not stupid. You know, it's it's very well structured. It's very clean. There's not a lot of fat around the edges. So that is all really good. Like the pacing is very strong. Jenna's done a very fantastic job of leading you down a path, building up tension, paying it off, and then not lingering. I think a lot of books that I've read have had that sense of lingering on something after they've made their point about it, and I feel that's really detracted from the work overall because it makes it drag, and you're like, we get it, just move on. But the moment I started to think, okay, this is getting a touch long in the tooth, it moved on. So I was like, okay, well, like it went on just long enough for it to make its point and not become a super annoyance, and that was really good. So props to Jenna there. Action scenes, she does really well. This is a very action heavy book, and a lot of times when you have an action heavy book, it can be tempting to go all out and just describe like this mental action movie action scenes. We don't get that. A lot of the all of the action scenes drive the story forward, they drive the characters forward, they're all very interlaced with the characters, and because the characters are quite simple, it's easy to root for and boo for the hero and the protagonist, which is something I really sort of look for in these simple kind of action scenes, and that's good stuff, good thumbs up there. The main characters I think are very good. Tobias develops a lot as the story goes on. He starts off as this guy who's like, I don't really want to be here. I wish I could just go home. To really sort of developing as a guy and finding what he's fighting for. And he's like a good guy who's forced to do bad things. And the bad things he does are very bad, but he's a good enough guy that you understand like why he's doing it and stuff, and that is why I think you need a black and white dynamic there, because if you're going to have the good guy do really bad things, the only way to make it so that he doesn't become a bad guy is to have him do the bad things to worse people. And the villains in this, like the antagonists, are proper fucking antagonistic assholes, and that's great because we've had a lot of shades of grey villains recently, that when bad things happen to them, you're like, well, I didn't really want that to happen to him, I liked him. But in here, when bad things happen to him, you're like, fuck you, guy! Like, he got exactly what you deserved. So that's all really good. And that's really, where the strengths of the books are. Like, it's fun, it's fast-paced, it's engaging. Like, I read it. It's a 555 page book. I read it in like 4 or 5 days, and that's really like a testament to how engaging and gripping it really was from start to finish. It never let me down, it never dragged. The romance, there's like a big romance subplot that takes a lot of time in the book, and it's done really well. Tobias and his co-lead have a lot of very good interplay off each other. Their relationship is very fun. It builds really well, and it avoids a lot of the tropes. I think Jenna Moreci has deliberately built things up to seem kind of tropey and then invert them, which is good. But yeah, there are unfortunately quite a few things that held the book back, in my opinion. The main one, really, that just sort of filters down into everything else, is the world building, which is essentially not there at all. We get right into the story with this from Tobias's perspective, but I think she sacrificed a lot of world building for the sake of pace. We get to the tournament very quickly, but as a result we don't spend a lot of time with Tobias and his family and sort of figuring out how this world works. Like I say, it seems like he made the decision to enter this life or death tournament just because the shop was shut on the day that he went there, and if it was open he wouldn't have done any of this. So I don't know, you don't get this sense of this sense of grandeur, like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity kind of thing, which it's supposed to, it is, but you don't get that feel from it. You don't really understand what Tobias's village is like. You don't understand the palace or the arena or anything, and you don't get what Thessian culture is. So when you're doing this tournament, like, everyone is just sort of like, they're just basically a character that's been pulled out of nowhere. We get allusions to things like, one guy is a trapper, but you don't, like, I don't know what he does. There's a fisherman guy, but is it a fishing community? I don't know. Like, there's all sorts of things, and there's like nobility, but you don't, you get that the savior is at the top, right, of the hierarchy, and her husband is the sovereign. So they rule together, but you don't really understand what the sovereign's role is compared to the savior's role, and how that's been inverted, or any of that. So, like, because the savior is meant to be the ruler of the realm, but there's also the sovereign who does all this everything. He's like the real ruler of the realm, because his daughter is not married. I don't know. Like, this is what I mean. Like, I don't know. I don't understand how any of this works. There's magic that is very loose. Like, it's very light magic. The savior is the only one with magic, and she can share it with other people. But I guess she can share it with other people. I think it says that at some point, but we never really see it happen. Oh no, there is a bit where it does happen. Okay, yeah, there's a bit where she shares magic, so I guess that is true. But you don't really understand the limits of the magic or anything. It's kind of wishy-washy, which I don't mind. Having a light magic system, but when the rest of the world is just not filled out, it doesn't help. One of the big sort of things that really encompasses this idea that the world building just wasn't there is the naming conventions that she uses, like, are not consistent. So you've got characters that are called like Caesar and Milo, and Kaleo, which all sound like kind of Greco-Roman inspired. But then you've got this other guy, and his name is Wembleton, and I don't know why he's called Wembleton. It doesn't fit with the rest of the story that she's put together, and I feel like she just called him Wembleton because she thought it was a funny name. But why? I want the Wembleton spin-off, okay? I want the Wembleton spin-off, Jenna, so give that to me, only to me. So that sort of happens, and this leads in to a big problem, which is, because there's not a lot of world building and there's not a lot of description. I think describing the scene and things is one of the things that Jenna is weakest at. We don't get a lot of description, so I'm left to just sort of fill in the blanks myself about what everything kind of looks like. And as a result of that, my mind kept drifting back to this program called Spartacus Blood and Sand. You may have heard of it. I have a funny feeling that Jenna Moreci has heard of Spartacus Blood and Sand, and might have done all of her research for what Greek and Roman history was like by watching Spartacus Blood and Sand. I mean, I can't guarantee that that's the case, but I mean, the saviour is described as being a redhead with milky white skin and big boobs. And I mean, if we look on the back here, I mean, I'm not saying that Jenna definitely did see Spartacus Blood and Sand, but when you introduce your characters and they're described as having armor that only covers like the top of one arm, and like they've got leather straps over their chest, I mean, it seems like she, I think Jenna did see Spartacus Blood and Sand. I think she's heard of it. Correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I think she might have seen Spartacus Blood and Sand. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I get that you've taken inspiration from other popular media that portrays a similar time, but I think it's led to this sort of lazy shorthand where she said, though the characters enter an arena, and like I'm just sort of left to decide what this arena looks like in my head, and as a result I just imagine it looked like Spartacus, and they go to like a palace, and all that I know about the palace is that it's got a stained glass window, um, but other than that I guess it just looks like Spartacus. Like the on a world building point, like I didn't know that Thesson was meant to be hot until the last 70 pages. Apparently it was a desert climate the whole time. I had no idea. So yeah, this all kind of leads into an inconsistent tone in the way the book is written. There are token attempts to give every character like a very anachronistic way of talking. Like they'll say apologies instead of sorry, and like they'll say things that you would have heard out of Spartacus Blood and Sand, where it's like, apologies brother, please spare a moment of your time, like things like that. But then other times characters will just like talk like a woman from 2018 California, which is what Jenna Moreci obviously is, and like they'll go, like a character will be like oily, he'll be oiled up, and like someone said, "Oh my god, you're hot as fuck." It doesn't match, and that's a big problem because it breaks the suspension of disbelief of this setting that you've built. Where I'm like, oh, they're speaking modern now, okay, and like that, it bothered me, but it's not a deal breaker again because like the story is fine, and it's not like super deep immersion, so you're not that worried when the disbelief is broken, but it is there and it's worth mentioning. This also happens sometimes where the subplot becomes very dominant over the main story at really inappropriate moments, which kind of takes away from the overall pacing, because like there's a lot of scenes where we're focused on the romance when something really urgent has just happened in the main story, and we probably shouldn't be focusing on the romance at that point. And that was a problem for me. Like there were a lot of times, especially towards the later half of the book, where I'm like, things are developing now very quickly towards a conclusion in the main story, and we're still, taking huge sections of time to make goo eyes at each other and do deep kissing. So that was weird, and yeah, I mean, a lot of the time, Tobias is horrified about the things that he's forced to do, and then sometimes he's just joking about it. Like, it's very inconsistent tonally, and that would be a problem again in a book that is more, in depth. But I think this is, as a fun, adventure-y kind of read, this is perfectly fine. And that's really where we have to leave off, because it's got a lot of problems that for the hardcore fantasy fan is going to bother them. It's not got good world building, it's not like tonally consistent, you don't get a really good idea of what this world is meant to be like unless you've watched Spartacus, and then kind of you just imagine it's kind of like that but with different characters in it. But it is a fun story. The characters are interesting, the main ones anyway. The side characters do sort of get lost in the middle. Like they kind of blend, a lot of them blend into the background, which is going to happen when you've got loads of characters. But the romance is really strong. Like it is very good, even if it is focused on sometimes a bit too much. Overall, the pacing is really good. Like, Jenna knows how to string you along and leave you wanting more. And the book did keep me gripped and engaged. Like, I can't deny that. It was a fun read. I enjoyed reading it. So I would recommend it to you if you can, like, put aside all these things that are, you know, more difficult to, like, invest in. Because yeah, I mean, if you go and watch Spartacus Blood and Sand, and then go and read The Saviour's Champion, and you'll, like, be able to subconsciously wallpaper over the things that Jenna didn't describe at all. So yeah, overall 3 stars. Like, as I say, this isn't like a glowing review, and it's not a really, like, I don't want to be really fucking negative about it, because it was good. Probably the best self-published work I've read, so that's something. So well done, Jenna, for bringing a book out. Of course, it's obviously a lot of hard work has gone into this, and you should be proud of it. It's a good book, just not super stellar. It's not going to be for everyone, but you know, it is pretty fun, so maybe give it a read. And that was my review for The Saviour's Champion. Don't forget to subscribe and shit down below if you want to, and just stay subscribed forever so you can see all my other reviews, I guess. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.